Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, there's the sheiks. There's the muftas. There's some of the imams, the belief, the five pillars of Islam. There's the guard dog, or the guide dog for Muslim women called the burqa. There's a Saudi Arabia now allowing women to drive, and Islam gets results. Obedient women, impressive technical skills, moral clarity, respectful children. And back in 2007, Islam and Judaism's holiest days overlapped by 10 days. Muslims racked up 397 dead bodies and 94 terror attacks across 10 countries during this time, while Jews worked on their 159th Nobel Prize. So here we have a picture of the Nobel Prize winners, Jewish and Muslim, and you can see the number of Nobel Prizes in medicine, 55, yet Jews only comprise 0.2% of the world population, where Muslims comprise about 25% right now. He actually, and of course, the ABC News, I don't know if you've saw this, but they were presenting a woman who was supposedly trying to explain what all of these guys were killing themselves. They were wanting to die on the battlefield, and that's because they were going to get all these 72 beautiful brown-eyed furries. And she said, well, those aren't women, those are raisins. And so David Wood went through and he described these supposed raisins while he's eating a box of raisins. And he's describing them in the Quran and the Hadith. It gets very detailed description of these beautiful that have never been with a man and various other details concerning them. Then I talk about the Taliban online. Now, what are you seeing? Are you seeing a full screen or are you just seeing a small portion?
Full
We're
screen.
seeing a full screen.
Okay, good. So here's my singles online dating system, Taliban online. Osama says, before I found this site, my love was limited to beasts of the field, but now I found many women to subjugate and brutalize. Nice job. So he's got a picture of these women. Of course, you can't see anything because they're wearing a burqa. And even the burqas themselves, they can see very little because they don't have peripheral vision. A lot of them get run over by cars because they can't see things coming from their side vision. And so here is looking for a little sunshine, name frozen, age 28, location tent, occupation not allowed, income not allowed, hobbies not allowed.
Jeez.
And of course, this is true of Muslim women in a lot of these countries. So since they can't do anything, a lot of them start having children about the age of 14. And that's why they end up having as many children as they do have. And that's how they take over a country, simply by birth rate. They don't really get a lot of converts. In fact, they say if you took away the apostasy laws, 95% of them would leave overnight. Apostasy laws is if you leave Islam, they kill you. Now that's not true in America, but that's true in a lot of Islamic countries. And in fact, a lot of them in Europe, a woman will do something and they will find a way to kill her. A Muslim man can be married to 4 women at a time. Men have the right to ask for a divorce, but not the women. Women only inherit half of what a man inherits. A woman is not allowed to answer the door at her home if her husband is not there, even if it's her brother or relative. And women should stay in their houses. If the wife refuses to have sexual relationships with her husband, it's permissible for the husband to physically beat her until she submits. So wife beating. And then Muslim women veils. Here's some of their various forms of clothing, the hijab, and here's some of the various forms. The burqa themselves, the burqa, pretty much you don't see much of anything.
David, your voice is fading out.
Oh, okay. So you see that screen with Muslim women's veils.
Yes.
And then here's family picture. I've got another one that has a whole bunch. Yeah, that's my sister there. And of course, hell is full of women. And the reason that most of the women end up in hell is because they're not obeying their husbands properly. So that's why they're sent to hell. And men are superior to women in so many ways because women are stupid. I wish I could quote the actual part of the Quran that says they have less intelligence than men. And also that now you probably read or saw these ISIS sex slave prisons where these poor girls, young girls, many of them, they would scratch things on the wall. They had basically dog bowls for eating food. Basically, they were raped. They were basically mistreated horribly. And they were saying, "World, where are you?" They were screaming, crying out to America, "Come, help us." And of course, sometimes they would take these poor women and they would cut them up and ship the body parts off to their parents.
Oh,
And so this is how they treat their women many times. Now, Shabir Ali I was over in London and we were debating Muslims, and Shabir Ali, the leading Muslim debater in the world, came up to me after the last debate and said, "We, meaning the Muslims, lost all 7 debates." I said, well, I gave him a book on creation. I said, well, that's understandable. Let's see. Muhammad, according to the Quran, Muhammad, he didn't walk on water. He didn't feed 5,000 people. He didn't heal anybody. He didn't raise anybody from the dead. Didn't raise himself from the dead. So they were looking around for a miracle they could ascribe to Muhammad. But the only miracle they could was the Quran itself, the scientific reliability of the Quran. I said, what does the Quran teach? Well, it teaches there's 7 earths, flat like a carpet, separated by 500 years, that's walking years, sitting on top of this large fish called a noon, who's on top of a bowl, which is on top of a cube, which is on top of dust. Only Allah knows what's under the dust. And above the 7th earth are 8 giant goats with 500 years between their front hooves and their back hooves, shooting stars or missiles God throws at demons to keep them out of heaven. And the sun sets in a murky pool surrounded by a bunch of people. So I said, what did he get right in the area of cosmology and cosmogony? Well, absolutely nothing. Here's a picture of that illustration. You see the 7 earths. And then, of course, these heavens would collapse in on the earth if God didn't sustain them. And of course, here you have a picture of the 7 heavens. A lot of this these are from the Secrets of Enoch, but they borrowed from just about anything. They stole from just about anything they could from Zoroastrianism and various other religions about that time. A lot of them from the um, um, the apocryphal books. Now here's missiles uh, chasing demons. Now, how a missile could get a spiritual entity to chase it away, I don't know. But here's a birth process according to Islam. And of course, I wish I could go through the detailed birth process. They copied it right from the Talmud. And the Talmud had no idea what the birth process was all about. It has nothing to do with science. I wish I could repeat that, but it's on my notes, and I decided I was not going to show notes on this particular one because I was going to have a presenter mode. So now I can't do that. Otherwise, I would have had all my notes on this. But this is basically the true Islamic, true reproduction, human reproduction. It's extremely complex, but that's David Menton, who was actually taught the top 1% of medical students in America, has a video saying fearfully and wonderfully made, and it's so complex you wonder how any of us ever got here. But anyway, he didn't get that right. And of course, they said, what about human hygiene? Well, if a fly falls in your soup, one wing has the germs, the other has the antidote. So just dip it down, you'll be fine. And then they ask, well, what about as far as human hygiene is concerned, what about the pool of Buddha? The pool of Buddha had menstrual claws, human excrement, dead animals in it, but according to Muhammad, nothing could pollute the water. So they would put this all over their face, their mouth, their hands. It was to their ablution ceremony because Satan dwelled on their nose at night. So they had to sniff it up their nose and out their mouth 3 times. Basically, this was a system. And they asked, what about this pool? There's another pool that they had, and that one had a dead donkey in it. But according to Muhammad, they were going to use that to drink from. and feed it to their donkeys and their camels. But according to Muhammad, nothing could pollute the water. Here's an Islamic Air Force. This is Phil Haney. Now, Phil Haney, I knew Phil, and I asked him to come and speak for Eagle Forum. And he was willing to come. And then right after that, they shot him, killed him dead. And he had basically 300 of Islamic terrorists identified, located on his website, and Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State at that time, shut him down and completely erased his entire website. So, and he did write a book, See Something, Say Nothing. So at that time, as long as you were in Homeland Security, basically we're not allowing us to expose the Islamic terrorists here in this country. Then I have a friend, Mark Gabriel. He actually went to Al-Azhar University. He was when he was born, he didn't take to his mother's milk. So basically, this other woman just happened to be able to nurse him, but she happened to be a Christian. So after 2 years of Christian milk, they wanted to make sure he didn't become a Christian. So they sent him to Al-Azhar for grade school, high school, college. He ended up graduating second out of 6,000 students in college, got his master's degree, his PhD. He was head of the Islamic history and religion department at Al-Azhar. Probably knew more about Muhammad, or supposedly, than anybody on the planet. And yet one of his friends, who was a chemistry major, was killing these Christians. And he said, "Why are you doing this? Why are you killing? These are these are our friends. These are the fellows that we grew up with." And he said, "Well, if they're not willing to take the jizya tax, we're supposed to kill them." And so Mark Gabriel started looking at the Quran again. And there's a place in Quran that contradicts itself. So some place where it says it's okay to make friends with Christians, but other places it says if they don't take the jizya tax, you kill them. And that's what this fellow was doing. And so he started to realize that maybe there's something wrong with this Quran. And he told some of his students that he had some doubts about the Quran, about Allah, about God actually having that kind of mentality. And it came to the faculty. They called him into their office, fired him. That same night, the secret police came to his father's house at 3 o'clock in the morning, drug him out, and beat him severely, threw him in ice cold water. He fainted. They took him out. They put him in another pool of water up to his neck, had his hands and feet tied, and had rats that hadn't been fed for a long time. And they figured, okay, he says he's a thinker. These rats will eat his brain. So they came the next morning and they took the cover off, and there was a rat sitting on his head. One was sitting on his shoulder, but the rats never bit him once. And he says, "I have a great respect for rats." So can you see me or hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you.
Yes,
It's so quiet, I didn't know. Okay.
we're just all in shock.
Ah, wow.
Well, David Wood was a good friend of mine. In fact, we used to travel together. We traveled to England together. I was his roommate. One time I was in Washington, D.C., and I came back at 3 o'clock in the morning after talking to Muslims at the local coffee shop, the one that's been banned by our famous New York mayor. And he had a 300-pound Muslim beached out on my bed. So, and he was, witnessing to him. So I figured I'm not going to get any sleep tonight. He also had a friend, Nabil Qureshi. He wrote the book Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. But he noticed that Nabil would not respond because most of these Muslims in their countries are not given any information outside of Islam. In fact, if you went there and tried to share anything about Islam, they would kill you. They'd cut your head off. And so people from the outside can't get in, and people that are there don't dare say anything against Islam because here my friend Mark Gabriel was just questioning Islam. He wasn't even a Christian. He was just asking the questions. And to question it is enough to get severely beat. In fact, the only reason he got out of there at all was his sister's husband was a high-ranking official in the government, and he was able to get him out of there. But anyway, Nabil, for several years, David Wood, probably one of the best apologists I have ever seen, shared everything he could with Nabil, and he wouldn't respond. And it wasn't until the hadiths had been translated into English, he was able to use that material and expose Islam for what it really was. Basically, everything they say is a lie. And it wasn't until he actually shared that with Nabil that he was willing to come out. And this is what we call polemics. Apologetics is like the defense in a football team. The polemics is the offensive. They're the ones that score the touchdown. They're the ones that, and so in order to deal with most religions, you're going to have to be able to use polemics because people are brought up in a particular group. They've been raised in that. Their parents taught them that, and they're not likely to leave unless you are able to expose some of the errors in that particular group. So that's what David Wood had to do with Nabil. And by the way, Mark Gabriel, I introduced him to a friend, a guy named Tom Davies, and he had just translated the entire Bible into Arabic. Now, he's not a Muslim, and he was not from Arabic background. He was just a white guy like most of us, but he was able to translate it. He just took Arabic at Purdue University, 4 years of it, and he was so good at it, he basically could translate everything. And he said they don't really have a good Arabic Bible as far as he was concerned. They were using Allah for God, which is basically the moon god of the Quraysh tribe. So he wanted to be able to define things more clearly, and he was also a website developer. And so what he did is he came up with this website called the Arab Bible, and in that you can see you have the Arabic up here, and every time you see that word highlighted, it's Mark Gabriel's voice that you hear. So Mark was able to work with Tom and translate the entire Bible, and this is used for missionaries all over the world. And you see that every word, it gives all of the English translation, it gives where it's used other places in the Bible. And so anyway, all that information is available, and it's almost for free. Anybody that wants it, he'll give it to them. So it's helping missionaries all over the world. Now here we have Jay Smith. Now Jay Smith does not believe that Muhammad ever existed. And so he has a lot of good reasons, but one of the reasons was the fact that Mecca didn't live. He says like a three-legged stool. You need a place, you need a book, and you need a man. Well, the place, if one of those three legs falls, then basically the whole system falls. And Mecca was not even a city for over 100 years after Muhammad lived. In fact, it wasn't even mentioned on any map. It was not on the trade routes. It was supposed to be the mother of all cities. It was supposed to be a major trading city, but it wasn't. In fact, it was something like several thousand, I don't know exactly what it was, maybe 600 feet below the plateau. And so they wouldn't go down to Mecca on their trade route because there's no water down there for their camels. So it wasn't on the trade route, and it wasn't on the sea. Now, most of the time when they were traveling from India and China, they were trying to come up to Petra and various other cities in Europe, and they wouldn't unload the ship and put them on camels and then go up on the plateau. They just continue to go along up the Suez Canal. So anyway, this is not. I had all of this material I wanted to share, and I was going to do it on presenter mode, and I can't do it. I don't know why.
You're doing a fine job, David. It sounds great.
I mean, all of this material, I went out of my way to make sure it was on presenter mode so I could basically just show you the slides, and now I can't do that. But anyway, here's some of the classical accounts. Muhammad was born in 570. Supposedly, he was, let's see, This is Muhammad being exposed. And this a sacred city, by the way, is something that was put together by Dan Gibson. Dan Gibson spent his entire life over there, and he showed that all of the Qiblas were facing Petra, not Mecca. And the reason for that is because that's where they would travel. Now, the Muslims, the Islamic beliefs over in Arabia, once a year, they would go to their particular deity site, and they would go to Petra. And then we see this on rock formations. They would actually write notes along that way, and everything pointed towards Petra. Nothing pointed to Mecca. Well, why did they change it to go to Mecca? Because Petra had a earthquake which absolutely destroyed the city. And of course, the enemies were actually destroyed the temple there too. And so there was nothing left in Petra. So they took that black stone, they moved the black stone to Mecca, and then they changed all of the Qiblas to face Mecca. But all you see in the later editions of the Hadiths is Mecca. And Mecca was supposed to be Muhammad's place he grew up for 30 some years before he went to Medina, but he never was in Mecca because Mecca wasn't even a city during his lifetime. So what happened probably, if Muhammad ever really existed? Now, several people like J. Smith and Robert, what's his name, have written several books showing that Muhammad most likely never did exist because none of the Quran was written during Muhammad's lifetime. So we don't have the Quran, we don't have the Hadith. It was written by some people, but we don't know who. He was born, obviously, he supposedly had received these Meccan revelations for 12 years, and then supposedly, if he did receive any, it was going to Petra, not Mecca. And then he had the Midraj, which was basically got on this flying horse and flew to the seventh heaven, and Allah said that they should have something like 50 prayers a day. And so he went back to the sixth heaven, and Moses said that's too many. So he went back to talk to Allah, and finally they worked it out. So there's only 5 prayers a day. And so then the Hijrah, that's when he went from Mecca to Medina. But really, probably if he ever existed, it was from Petra to Medina. He received the Medina revelations because he was dealing with a lot of people who were more or less the groups, the more or less people that could be persuaded to attack the Jews in Medina. There were 3 Jewish groups in Medina at the time, and they received Muhammad just fine until he gathered enough people to get political influence, and then eventually had them killed or run off. In fact, that's basically what happened. And then 632, he died. He was poisoned by one of his wives. If he was true prophet of God, he would have known about the poison, but then Abu Bakr took over, who probably never existed. And so we're looking at all of these things. We don't know a lot about what's happened, but this is the idea. The 21st century scholars' criticism of Islam as we know it did not exist in the 7th century, but evolved over a period of about 200 to 300 years. The Quran probably was not revealed to one man in these 22 years, but likely evolved over a period of 500 to 50 to 100 years. The conclusion is that the history of Islam, at least from the time of the Caliph Abd al-Malik and before, is later fabrication. The Malik people, they actually invented Islam. So the revisionist concern is, if so much history of Islam was written down so late, then why did it take so long to write it down? I mean, Muhammad had a secretary. Even if Muhammad couldn't write, the secretary could have written it down, but they didn't. These people were not illiterate, by the way. I mean, they spoke Arabic. And of course, J. Smith said he learned Arabic in about, I don't know, it was 3 weeks or something. You know, I mean, if you speak it, you should be able to read it. And so where did the biographies get their material from? Nobody knows, because Ibn Ishaq was the first biography of Muhammad, And we don't have nothing of Ibn Ishaq, but Ibn Hisham took some of the material from Ibn Ishaq and came up with his book. We don't have that one either. So we have some of it that basically appears in the hadiths. Now, the hadiths are supposedly the life of Muhammad, what he did, what he said, what somebody heard him say. That's the story of Muhammad. Whereas the Quran is basically God's revelation to Muhammad, basically to man. But it isn't a story or a history of Muhammad. We have to go to the hadiths for that, and there's 6 hadiths. We should not, should we be? So anyway, here's a geography problem. And here's going, this would be if they were to be on the trade routes, came up through here, and eventually gets to Petra, which was a leading city at that time. And Petra is where all the Jews will flee during the tribulation. At least that's what most people believe. It's at the very tip of Jordan, the bottom portion of Jordan. And it has mountains on both sides. So it's a really good fortress, and they've got walls north and south. And there's a river on the north side. But Petra was a leading trade community. It was the mother of all cities, actually. So everything that was said about Mecca was probably true of Petra. And of course, there are 9 places that are named. And these are small towns, but Mecca wasn't one of them. So obviously it didn't exist. It was on no maps here. And here we see Petra had a lot of vegetation. It had the valley. Everything that was described of Mecca is actually true of Petra. It had a stream with fields, trees, grass. It had this clay loam. They could grow crops on it. It was in a valley. And so Petra could be the place where it should have been where Muhammad grew up if he existed at all. And here again, we see all of the Qiblas were facing Petra until 725 AD. The Qibla was not finalized towards Mecca until 822, almost 200 years too late. And of course, the reason they faced that is because that's supposedly where their prophet was. So they're a territorial worshiping of deity, even though they only got down one deity at this point. So there's
David,
new books that are being.
What is a Qibla?
Qibla is the wall where they pray towards. Now, after they changed the direction of the Qibla, they had to do something to put a sign on the wall that you pray this direction. So now you're not praying towards. And the reason they found this out was Marco Polo. He would go to China. He did a lot of trade. There was a lot of trade going back and forth to China. So there was about 100,000 Muslims in China. They had a mosque there. And if you look at the mosque, you look at the Qibla, it's not going towards Mecca. It's going towards Petra. The one in India was the same way. So all of these Qiblas, these walls where they all pray towards, were facing. So they built the mosques were built so that that one wall would be facing supposedly the place where Muhammad grew up. And unfortunately, when they changed the direction, they had to put something on the wall. They have a name for it, where, okay, now you're going to face this direction. So anyway, they were all facing further north. In fact, a lot of them thought it was facing Jerusalem. There's a story about the fact that the Jews didn't respond to Muhammad, so they changed it from Jerusalem to Mecca. That wasn't Jerusalem. But if you look at the Qiblas, if you go towards Petra, it's on the way. If you look at Petra, it's right kind of in line with Jerusalem. So that's why they thought that it was Jerusalem that they were facing. But if you look at the ones in India and China, you see that it's not Jerusalem at all. It's Petra. So now, what do Muslims believe? And this is horrible because I can't go through this stuff now. I can't go through it I don't have any notes. Islamic eschatology, the end times. I wanted to share this.
Can you just remember what's in your brilliant head?
This is horrible. I just can't do this. And I spent so much time working on it too, trying to make sure that I'd have it for you. But the biography of Muhammad. This is a standard Islamic narrative, of course. And I find Islamic scripture, Thomas Carlyle, he basically gave a detailed event description of how the Quran was absolutely impossible for anybody to understand. About 1/4 of it doesn't make any sense even to Islamic scholars. And the reason for it is because in the 700s, there were only 14 or 16 consonants. Now there's 24, and they added new pointings. But the pointings, for a lot of it, were not the same pointings that you would have in Arabic. They were Syriac pointings. And so when they took those words and they took off the pointings that they had placed on there, that one of the imams said that they were supposed to, or one of the leaders said they were supposed to put Arabic pointings on there, it makes no sense. But you take those pointings off and you put Syriac pointings, and it's hymns to Jesus. It's Christian hymns. 1/4 of the Islam of the Quran is Christian hymns. So they were borrowing from apocryphal literature, just about anything they could in Arabic. They needed a book. Interesting quotes from the Quran. So anyway, Mark Twain had some things to say. Basically, he was going through and he saw the absolute destruction of these people. It was bloody, horribly bloody. Here are the basic hadiths. The most considered the most reliable one is the Hadith Bukhari. There's Dawood, all of the others, but the Bukhari is the main one. I think it's 11 volumes. I have it somewhere here. Islamic terrorists, they've carried out more than 47,330 deadly terror attacks since 9/11. I put this together about a couple months ago. And then I go through each one of these areas. Algeria.
We can't hear you, David.
Well, I'm not saying anything. I don't want to do this. I don't have any notes. This is ridiculous.
Can't you just remember what's on the top of your head with your brilliant mind?
Well, it's just, I should be able to do this. I mean, I had it going. I don't know what's wrong, but it just won't work.
Are you on a Mac, Dr.?
No, I'm just a
PC.
regular. Yeah.
Can we ask questions?
I mean, here's Saudi Arabia. These places are Islamic places. And I went through each one of these I had showing the terrorist activities that have been done in each one of these countries. And I was with an Indonesian church Sunday morning. In fact, I led the prayer for 3 churches. And it's interesting that in Indonesia, the Muslims are 77,219,114 Muslims as of yesterday. And there's only 4,000 Christians. So the Muslims pretty much dominate Indonesia. I didn't realize Indonesia was an actual country. I thought it was like that all of those islands together, but it is actually a country. And this is basically what they have. I had a friend of mine who was he was a missionary in New Guinea to the headhunters in New Guinea, and he basically wanted to go get a insurance policy, and he went to the guy. He says, "We insure anybody." And he said, "What's your occupation?" He says, I'm a missionary to the headhunters in New Guinea." He said, "No, what's your really occupation?" And he said, he showed him his missionary identification. He says, "Get out of here." Anyway, we don't insure missionaries to headhunters. But anyway, this is Indonesia. And the ultimate goal of Islam is world conquest. Islam is not a normal religion like other religions. Muslim nations are not normal nations. Muslim nations are very special because they have a command to rule the entire earth. And here's the Bosnian genocide, the mass graves that were done there. Basically, the ISIS mass killing. pictures of more mass killing, killing in Iraq. ISIS beheads a Kurdish woman, and he's smiling. Islamic killing of Ethiopian Christians in Libya, basically what they're doing in all of the Nigeria now. Nigeria is made up of about 50% Christians, about 50% Muslims, and the Muslims are killing and burning the churches in Nigeria. And I don't know when that's going to stop. But Christians are targets because Christians won't convert. So, and here's the Armenian genocide. Basically, they killed about 2 million Armenians, somewhere between 1.5 million and 2 million Armenians. Most of the Armenians were Christians. I actually took Arabic from an Armenian Christian, and I realized that that's a really hard language to learn. Here's some heads that they have from Armenian genocide. And they would lick the blood of the Armenians so they'd have more energy to kill more Armenians. Here they're hanging them on crosses. And I have no problem with Islam except for slavery, stoning, beheading, misogyny, child marriage, pedophilia. And you see them all hanging, cutting off limbs, the right arm and the right hand and the left limb for stealing, inequality, Sharia law, honor killing, terrorism, illiteracy, multiple wives, child beating, you can rape, whipping, forced belief, you know. And like I say, if you don't believe in Islam, you can live there as long as you're paying the jizya tax, which is over 80% of your income. So you're pretty much designated a poor person. Now, is ISIS Islamic? Well, yes, ISIS is Islamic. In fact, everything about ISIS is Islamic. In fact, they murder people, have people murdered, execute prisoners, commit genocide, target women and children. Why do they target women and children? Because they believe that killing women and children is going to do more harm emotionally to the men than just killing them. So they want to terrorize people. And not only do they want to kill you, they want to kill you violently. And the more violently they kill you, the more terror they can stir up. And as a result, you end up wanting to either leave or convert. And so, again, we say Islam, a religion of peace, slay the unbelievers wherever you find them. Muslims must not take infidels as friends. Any religion other than Islam is not acceptable. And maim and crucify the infidels if they criticize Islam. Terrorize and behead those who believe in scriptures other than the Quran. Muslims must muster all the weapons to terrorize the infidels. The unbelievers are stupid. Urge the Muslims to find them. Actually, the average IQ in Muslim nations is 80.1. When opportunity arises, kill the infidels wherever you find them. The Jews and Christians are perverts. Fight them. Make war on the infidels living in your neighborhood. Punish the unbelievers with garments of fire, hooked iron rods, boiling water, melt their skin and bellies. That's what they would do, pour boiling water on someone. And then here's a picture of the global challenges. There's death for apostasy, death for blasphemy, death for adultery, death for being raped, death for sorcery, death for atheism. You rape a woman if she's exposed anything about her, like just even the hair on her head is exposed. That is worthy of throwing acid in her face or raping her, because we're not supposed to. They're not. That's their fault. It's their fault for exposing themselves, because Muslims have no self-control, you know, and so they, at least that's the way it's worded. Death for atheism, death for not being a Muslim. And you see the whole, you know, that's Islam, religion of peace. And here's what they do. This poor woman, she basically had acid thrown in her face, and that she's blind as a result of that. And that was in Britain for not properly covering up her face. And that happened in Britain. And here's another one, a woman. Basically, this one is a documentary, more than 150 acid attacks on Pakistani women each year for not wearing a burqa. Now, this particular woman, she had her husband poured acid on her face when in her sleep when she found out that he had been married 3 times before her. So he's the one that had been married 3 times. And as a result, she went home to her parents. She jumped to her death after 39 failed surgeries.
Terrible.
Here's another beautiful woman, but she was forced to marriage at 14. Husband wanted to take her to Saudi Arabia and sell her, so she refused to go, and so he burned her with acid that night. 10 million child brides in Islam, because Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 years old, consummated the marriage later, a few years later. And so that's, if he's the perfect man, then they're allowed to do that. Here's a 16-year-old Moroccan girl has committed suicide after judge ordered her to marry her rapist, according to Moroccan media report. If you rape someone and as long as you marry them, then there's no penalty. Now these are mosques in London, and of course you can see Jesus compared to Muhammad.
You're fading out again, David.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks for telling me. Yeah, Jesus versus Muhammad, and you can see killed, no, led armies, no, owned slaves, no, had wives, no, tortured, no, lied, no. But of course, Muhammad, yes, on all of those. And here's what happens when you carry a Bible in Saudi. Whoops, I can't get this thing.
Oh,
Penalty for carrying a Bible in Saudi Arabia. They put your hand in this machine and cut it up to pieces.
mm,
And religion of peace. How dare the Pope suggest we're violent? Death to America, death,
mm.
And so here you have, it was Khalid bin al-Walid, and I have stories about him, but I can't give them because I don't remember them all. Different types of jihad. There were basically about 18 different types of jihad. This is getting him out of prison, and I can't give you the rest of them because I don't have them. I don't have anything. I don't have any of this information. Islam is a copy of paganism, and here are some of the terrorist training camps. There's a whole lot more than are on here. They use mosques as training camps, and so everywhere in the country, they're training, and they actually store weapons, because this is what a mosque is. It's not really like a church so much as it's more of a Islamic stronghold where they're going to attack you from. And of course, John Guandano, he's got a ministry called Understanding the Threat, provides threat-focused strategy, operational consulting, training, education for federal, state, and local leadership, and agencies in government, private sector for private citizens. And he's got an excellent website. He's got videos showing how to prepare for a Muslim attack. Especially, it's an interesting picture of Israel surrounded by Islam. The little red dot, that's Israel. And yet they are stronger than the entire Islamic world. They're the 4th strongest military in the world. And here's Muslims living with Muslims, big problem. Buddhists living with Hindus, no problem. Hindus living with Christians, no problem. Hindus living with Jews, no problem. Christians living with Shintos, no problem. And you see that. Confucius with Baha'is, Baha'is with Jews, Jews with atheists, atheists with Buddhists, Buddhists with Sikhs, Sikhs with Hindus, nothing, no problem, no problem, no problem. Muslims living with Hindus, problem. Muslims living with Buddhists, problem. Muslims living with Christians, problem. Muslims living with Jews, problem. And you go right down the list. Muslims living with Muslims, big problem. Because they're not happy in Gaza. They're not happy in Egypt. They're not happy in Libya. They're not happy in Morocco. They're not happy in Iran. They're not happy in Iraq. They're not happy in Yemen. They're not happy in Afghanistan. They're not happy in Pakistan or Syria or anywhere else. The only place they're happy is in Australia, England, any country that's not Islamic. But who do they blame? They don't blame Islam. And here's the biography of Muhammad when I wanted to go through the entire thing, but I can't. Here's a dhimmi status. The dhimmi status, basically, in short, a dhimmi is a non-Muslim who lives in a Muslim state, and he has to give at least 80% of his income. Here's Medina, Dome of the Rock, and the spread of Islam by immigration. This is one of your slides, Orlene. but that's the end. So I'm sorry I couldn't give you anything that 99% of my material was not here for me. So I'm sorry.
Well, we learned so much from you anyway, David. David has a photographic memory. He can rattle things off without having any notes in front of you. So I think we've all have learned much. Will you take some questions from us, David?
Sure.
One of the things that made me first aware of how bad Islam is, I had to teach a 2-week course for the 7th grade world history class at Hillsburg Middle School, which is a town just outside of Santa Rosa. And I was appalled at what I was supposed to teach. Can you tell us what some of the crazy teachings are that are going on in our public schools about Islam?
Well, for one thing, they teach Christianity, but they teach their version of Christianity, which is nothing like what Christianity actually teaches. So they basically brainwashed our students, and they, you have an excellent slide on that, so I'll let you tell them. What do you?
Well, that was kind of one of the reasons I wrote my book, which is called Islam Rising, Christianity Waning in Europe and the USA. Is there a way to bring the picture back so I can show this slide or this book?
David, stop your share.
Yeah.
Okay, there we are. So this is pretty fat. It's about 500 pages, and I put my experience in here of having to teach in the 7th grade this 2-week course, and I was just appalled. As a public school teacher, I was supposed to have the students make a prayer rug, have them come dressed in Muslim attire, take a Muslim name, and then they were to memorize a prayer to Allah. And I thought, what happened to the public schools? I thought we had separation of church and state. The Supreme Court made this ruling back in 1962 that we were not supposed to have prayer anymore in the public schools. We were not supposed to have any religious teachings. The Bible could not be taught anymore. But yet we had the right to teach the Muslim religion and have them memorize a prayer to Allah. So I didn't do any of that. And when it came to, I was supposed to have them memorize the 5 pillars of Islam for the final exam. And so before I handed out the 5 pillars, I handed out a copy of the 10 Commandments for each of the students. And I said, they are the cousins of the children of Israel. They both are descendants from Abraham. And that was the first lesson I was supposed to teach, showing how both Ishmael and Isaac came from Abraham. And so I said, well, let's compare notes, what their cousins are believing. And so we read the 10 Commandments, and then we read the 5 pillars of Islam. And then I said, let's compare. Is there anything that matches up? The only thing that matches up is thou shalt have no other gods before me, and thou shalt have no other God but Allah. And as David has brought out, Allah is not really a god. This is the moon god. It's a pagan god. And yet they're trying to say that they worship the same God we do. Not at all. And then nothing else matches up whatsoever. They have nothing about thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal. In fact, if they use the name of Allah, they can do all of those things, and they can lie. And boy, as David told us, they lie without any problem whatsoever, and they kill if they do it in the name of Allah. And if they supposedly kill a Christian or Jew, they and their family will be exalted and be blessed because of this horrible killing. So it's just a very horrible religion. And yet the textbook that the kids use in the public schools, the one that I was using back then is probably even worse now. It was called Through the Centuries. It had 78 pages devoted to Islam, 48 pages about Christians, but most of them were very negative. Everything about Islam was positive. They were saying that the the religion spread so rapidly because people recognized it as a very fair, equal religion that made people feel better about themselves. Nothing about threatening them with the sword if they didn't convert to Islam. And also that they were doing this through trading among all of the various countries. But it was an absolutely whitewashed history of Islam and painting Christianity in a really bad light. So it was a very eye-opening experience for me, and that's one of the reasons I started doing more research about it and ended up with this book. But I totally agree with everything that David has told us, and I am appalled at how now we have a Muslim mayor in New York City. And can you tell us what would be the comparison, David, if we actually have Sharia law as all of the Muslims would like us to have in our nation? What would that do to our Constitution?
Well, that was one of the slides I had as I went through every portion of our Constitution and show what Sharia law does violate it, but I couldn't share that because it's on my notes. But, you have no freedom of speech, no freedom of writing, whatever you want to write, no freedom of expression. You have to believe Islam or you can't live there. It's basically you have to find some other place to live. I mean, because Sharia law would not normally take the whole state. It would probably be in a city, a certain area, eventually or first, and then eventually that they continue to multiply to the extent where they get people into the government. And that was one of the things they look for, getting positions of authority in the government. And once they do, then they can, like they do in Dearborn, they've got the police chief, the mayor, they're all Muslim. I was up in Dearborn with David Wood, and he got thrown in jail. And what happened was they would have this big thing. We answer any question. So David Wood and myself and a couple of other guys would come there and ask them questions they couldn't answer. And then the camera would be trying to videotape them. They basically didn't like that. But David Wood was great at that. And anyway,
there was a comment made by Sharon that we would be arrested under Sharia law for having a webinar like this. They would not want us at all speaking out against Muslim. There would be no freedom of speech. You're right.
Killed.
Are there any other questions that anyone else would like to ask? If you can raise your hands. And if I can see these. I can't really see any hands being raised.
I have a question.
David Kimball, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, David, as well. Good presentation. With Mamdani's recent election and thinking of other left-leaning mayors now of big cities, Brandon Cook in Chicago, Karen Bass, Los Angeles, Barbara Lee, Oakland, what other cities are you particularly concerned about with that leftward lean or tilt these days?
That's a good question. I do not know. I haven't checked out a lot of the cities, but any of those, it's interesting to see that those that reject Christianity.
We can't hear you, David.
It's interesting. Those that reject Christianity seem to get along with each other. The atheists and some of the other religions, as long as it's not Christian, they seem to be able to get along with one another to some extent. Now, Islam is a little unique, but so many other times, the atheists, the Marxists, they all seem to kind of have no problem because they actually want to do away with. In fact, that's what happens is most of the time people choose a religion where they're going to have freedom to do what they want. You do not come to the light because your deeds are evil. So they will reject Christianity based upon the fact that they have a certain lifestyle they want to continue. They'll choose a religion like atheism or something else where they can do whatever they want. Now, Islam is kind of interesting because they've got strong, very strict relations, strict um, commandments for a woman, but the guy is pretty much free to do whatever he wants. And so you can see as some guy came up with this, and it's really too bad. But cities, I don't know. I would be really concerned about, like, I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that Trump is going to be able to go into New York and basically get rid of all of the riffraff. And I think that Mondamni might actually let him do it. I think he knows that it's going to look good for him if it's a peaceful city. So I think he might change his mind on that.
So you think he's going to allow Trump to come in with the National Guard and clean up New York City like he's been doing other cities?
I think he might just do that. It's just because it might take some of the stress off of him. But I don't know. I know he met with Trump, and I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but it seemed like Trump was uh, giving him a little leeway.
According to the news, Trump was telling him he's going to do a great job. So that's a little bit disconcerting.
Yeah, it's kind of wondering what they actually did say. No, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you because I know Texas has some problems and other places. You would think that a conservative state like Texas would not have a problem. The problem is they've got so much land that they can pretty much do whatever they want. I traveled from Dallas one time to what's the far west city,
El Paso.
El Paso, yeah, and there was nothing there was a sign 400 miles to El Paso. I mean, like there's nothing in between. So there's a lot of places that they could actually, do things. The governor of Texas is not going to let them do it, hopefully, but
Well, they
we'll
do
see.
have, I understand, 45 mosques in Texas now. So
Do they?
obviously they have a lot of Muslims there. And you would think in such a conservative state that would not be the case, but Muslims are spreading out everywhere. It's just amazing.
Well, the world's going to end next Thursday, so it probably won't matter.
That's what David keeps telling us, but those Thursdays keep coming and going, David.
Yeah, well, that's sort of a Doc Beshore joke. We had a course on prophecy, and that would come up every once in a while.
Any other question that anyone has?
Just really good, but just always be prepared. Technology always fails us, or often fails us. So maybe just plan ahead.
Yeah, this um, um, Stephanie had asked me a question about what was going to happen, at the very end times. And basically, what happens is it's really a kind of an interesting situation where all of the various people, Moses and Jesus and everybody else, all the prophets, they feel unworthy of the task, and only Muhammad is willing to come and make judgment decisions. As far as there's an angel on your left shoulder keeping track of all your bad deeds, an angel on your right shoulder keeping track of all your good deeds, and you're put on this huge scale, and whatever weighs the most, that's where you go to one of the seven hells or one of the seven heavens. And the thing is, you can work your way out of hell as long as you're not a Christian, and eventually you can get to one of the heavens. But in order to get to paradise, it's going to take you a long time. So the best way is to get killed in battle, and you go straight to paradise with your 70 beautiful brown-eyed raisins. I mean, Uris.
Wow, what amazing beliefs they have. That is incredible. I just read a note that it was 48 mosques in the Dallas area, just
Wow,
itself in Texas. This is very scary.
it is. Yeah, Dallas is fairly conservative, but Austin is pretty liberal.
And now Stephanie is saying they have 55 mosques in every major county in the United States.
Ugh.
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
This is so one of the reasons I also wrote my book was my husband is from Germany. And in 2016, we were traveling in Germany just after they had allowed 2 million Muslims to come into the country. And it was amazing there. Just many German Christian churches had shut down. They were either being used as museums or they were being used as uh, places, a concert hall, but many of them were now mosques. And I'm just so worried that that's what's happening in the United States as well, with Christianity waning and Europe and Islam rising. So that is very scary. Any other question?
I had a question for Dr.
Go
David.
ahead,
And
Mr. Roy.
yeah, this is Chris Roy. Dr. Lehman,
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
William Federer's book called Socialism,
Hmm.
he makes a quote, and I've never heard this before, actually. This is pretty amazing. Makes a quote that the deaths from Islam over the period of time of modern history, AD, is like 240 million, something like that, which I find appalling. I look at the communist, socialist unnatural deaths in the 20th century being 100 million approximately. And is Islam really more than 2x that? Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, I had a chart showing all of that. I don't know what happened to it, but yeah, it's Islam is outnumbered by a factor of 10, I think, to all of the other dictators. So you're right on. He is right on that. There's, in fact, is he's not even alive and he's still killing people. That's the problem with Islam. The other dictators, they passed away, so they quit killing. But Islam has this built in, and that was the security of Islam. That's what kept it going, was the fact of the apostasy laws and the violence and aggression of going in and taking over countries. Because if you couldn't leave Islam, then if you left, you'd die. So with those apostasy laws, that kept Islam moving very fast. But a lot of people have experienced the that pressure, and unfortunately, they can't leave. They're afraid to leave, especially in Muslim countries. Now, if you get a free country like America, you're probably okay. But people don't realize what it's like in countries where Islam is where Sharia law is. People have no freedoms.
Another question, Dr. Lehman. I'm pretty sure this is an accurate verse, and it's the Quran 76, chapter 76, verse 2. And if I recall correctly, it says, we created man out of naphtha and semen. And
Right.
my question is, who is we?
um, well, they go through the birth process, and they got this right from uh, they got it right from the Talmud, and it's all a lie. But it talks about God coming from a man is coming, and the last thing that happens is the sex, whether it's male or female. I mean, everything in that list of how man was created in the womb is wrong. And I wish I could have gone through that. But you're asking originally, in most of these religions, they have no beginning. Islam has a creation account, and I basically was going to go through the creation account, but I can't do that either. I had that as one of my slides. Each slide had about a ton of material on it, and so anyway, I'm sorry.
My question, Dr. Lehman, is more to the fact that they claim Allah is one, and they
Yeah.
look at Christianity, three persons in one God. They don't get it. God never had a son, Jesus, and yet they
Right.
use the plural pronoun we, which points to me back to Christianity and the Old Testament. More, did they steal it from there? And it contradicts their entire theme of there's only one Allah.
Yeah, well, they kiss this black stone as if it were a god. And it's like, okay, now we've got two gods. So there is a majestic we sometimes that is used in literature. I'm not sure exactly what that one would be, but you, you may be right. It could be borrowing from Christianity. They borrow stuff without any hesitation whatsoever.
So, Dr. Lehman, if this man was true, that Muhammad actually did not exist, who is it who made all of this up and who wrote the Quran and put all this together? Was it a combination of people?
There is a group that probably did do most of it. They reinvented Islam after the destruction of Petra, and that's when the Qibla started facing Mecca. And this group, I have a lot of that detail in my notes, but I can't give it to you now. But anyway, that group was responsible for so much of this. Nobody knows who wrote the Quran. It was probably a combination of people over a period of about 200 years. And so it didn't come out till at least 80 years after Muhammad had died. So nothing was written during Muhammad's lifetime. Supposedly he recited things, and people would take tree bark and they would write it down on the tree bark, or they would write it on the leaf, and the camel would eat the leaf, or they would be those that would memorize it. There was a lot of people that memorized the entire Quran, and they were mostly warriors, and they'd go out to battle and they wouldn't come back. So they have a problem with actually the different Qurans they have. So this was having a problem. They were having a problem in Cairo, and they were asking these students questions regarding what the Quran taught, and they were getting 30 different answers because there was about 30 different Qurans. And so what they did is they threw all the rest of the Qurans in the river, the Nile, and basically kept one. And that became the standard Quran all over the world. It worked so well in Egypt that everybody adopted that particular Quran. But supposedly, according to the teaching, is that not one jot or tittle is going to change. Well, it's changed. It's continually changed, and they're not all in agreement. This one lady that was a friend of Jay Smith's, she found 27 different Qurans as she would go travel around. She ended up going to Speaker's Corner and showing the 27 different Qurans. So she's passed away.
That's amazing.
So, Dr. Lehman, if we wanted to hear more of your presentation with the notes, do you have it in another location that we could follow up after this great presentation that you gave us, which was a great intro? It was. Thank you.
Well, I apologize for that. My technical skills are pretty bad. I thought I knew how to do this. I was able to do it, but yeah, it's all written down. I'd be happy to send it to you if you want.
Well, you also spoke for the Orange County Eagle Forum chapter, and that was recorded, wasn't it, Gloria?
Yes, that was recorded, but I'm pretty sure it was. But it was not a
And
really good.
was that posted on our Eagle Forum website?
That probably wasn't as thorough as this one would have been.
Well, every time he speaks, I always learn something amazing, as I did tonight. So please do not apologize. I thought it was excellent, all the information you had for us, and your slides were great. And it just makes us want to hear you more, which really helps. Kelly, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious. What is our any tactics, any strategies with trying to disarm them, convert them? Um,
Yes, this is why we ought to be ready always to give an answer to everyone that asks us of the hope that is in us. And what I talk about polemics is to go after Islam, to know enough about Islam so you can point out to the inconsistencies, the contradictions in the Quran, the contradictions in the Hadith, and that's how David Wood won his best friend in college, was to point out all the inconsistencies in Islam, and the whole thing makes no sense whatsoever. If you understand, actually, I wish I could have read that one. Uh, Review of the Quran. Mark Twain, he was always good at reviewing things like that, and I always enjoy reading his reviews of religious literature. He's always fun. But this one fellow did an excellent job. I would say just study it and be able to point out the inconsistencies. And one interesting thing, something pointed out to me, is that there are no prophecies concerning Muhammad before he came. They try to find one, but it doesn't exist. It was actually Moses. And so I say there's no prophecies concerning Muhammad before he came, but in Christianity, you've got at least 300 prophecies concerning him, starting with you go right through um, the prophecies concerning Jesus, and his fellow that wrote the books, Science Speaks, Peter Stoner wrote, and he said 300. The fellow that wrote The Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah said there was probably about 456 prophecies, but with just 48 of those prophecies, that first of all, how many people throughout history have been born in Bethlehem? How many of those people who have been born in Bethlehem have been crucified? How many have been crucified between two thieves? How many have had their garments? How many have been sold for 30 pieces of silver, not $29.99? And it goes through and looking at the laws of compound probability. He came up with the probability of just 48 of those things would be the same as taking electrons, cramming them one up against another would take you 19 million years to count a line 1 inch long at the rate of 250 a minute. So to count a cubic inch, it would take you 19 million years times 19 million years times 19 million years just to count them. Start at the center of the Earth, create these balls of electrons, 6 billion light years in radius at the rate of 500 a minute for 6 billion years, and it'd be 10 to the 10th times that. Mark one, mix them up, and have a blindfolded guy pick the right one the first time. And that's just 48 prophecies, and we're talking about over 300. Those are the credentials that God gave his son so that it would be without excuse to recognize him when he came. Like I say, there's no prophecies concerning Muhammad before he came, no prophecies concerning the founder of any other cult or world religion before they came. Christianity is totally unique.
And there's no prophecies that Muhammad ever gave that have come true. Is that correct?
That's another point. That's an excellent point. Yeah. He wasn't able to predict anything, and he wasn't predicted himself. And they have a real problem with that. But the problem with them is that they're not allowed to think for themselves. They're not allowed to question it. And you get into that kind of mindset, they just go along with it and they live their life. But you have to point out to them that there's a consequence for not knowing Jesus. And so I would say, just in fact, this is a good question. I just listened to Ray Comfort. He came to our church and spoke, and he said everybody fears death. Actually, there's 4 fears that we all have. We fear failure. We fear first we fear rejection. Second, we fear failure. Third, we fear poverty, and the fourth one we fear death. Well, everybody fears death, and if you're going to die, everybody's going to die. You want to know where you're going before you die, and that would be a good thing to know, because it's too late afterwards. Now, most religions believe that you can go out of heaven out of hell into heaven after you die. Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, a lot of religions teach that, but Christianity does not. You basically, after you die, after your death, comes judgment. There is no second chance. And so you want to point that out to somebody would you like to know for sure before you die where you're going, that you're not going to go to hell? Because if you break even one of the commandments, that's enough to send you to hell. Now, which commandment do you find it's the most difficult for you to keep? If you look at a woman to lust after her, you've committed adultery already in your own heart. Every man, probably that's happened. So you should just one of those commandments, and if you can share with them something that they have actually done, that's that the problem is with Islam, they don't believe in original sin. They believe that we were all born perfect, and if you go on a Hajj pilgrimage, you're taken back to the time when you were born without any sin. So there are ways that there are ways of getting away from it, but they don't really see Jesus ever having died. He basically never died on the cross. It was somebody else that looked like Jesus, and so he was taken directly up into heaven by God. So he never died. So we never have his death paying for our sins, according to Islam.
Nor do they think that it's not necessary for someone to pay for our sins, that there's no atonement necessary. And they don't
Yeah,
believe that Christ is the Son of God.
that was Shabir Ali debated Dave Wood on that very subject, and that was no, he debated it was Jay Smith on that subject. Why would a father, allow his son to die? So yeah, you're right. That they do they don't believe that.
So, in all of the debates that you had with Muslims, were you able to change their minds by winning all the debates that you had?
Well, I am not a debater when it comes to Islam. You mentioned that, but actually, I would go with these people and I would give deals on apologetics and various other things. I would speak, but most of the time I would be introducing the debaters. I wasn't one of the debaters. So that was Dave Wood and that was Shabir Ali. And I mean, that was uh, others mostly. Um, I've debated a lot of other groups, but Islam was one that they haven't. Like I would speak at Islamic conferences and things like that, and I would try to share the truth with them on what I would share if I was debating. And I have debated with them. Okay, I've debated with them various Muslims, leading Muslims on the phone back and forth, but not as a formal debate.
Well, I remembered you told us that when you were in London, they said that your team
Yeah,
were victorious in all 7 debates. Were any
yeah.
minds changed because of that?
Well, Shabir Ali, he told me that, and I was there right there with him. In fact, Dave Wood asked me, he had a debate, a fellow about Islam or Christianity, which is the religion of peace. And I said, well, just print out, he had an ability to do that, print out everything they've done this week. And so he did, and he dropped it to the floor. It was a huge list of all of the terrorist activities that had been done that week. So yeah, I was there with them all of that time, but I don't know. The Muslim is not normally going to admit it when he's around other Muslims. So if they did convert, it's going to be something they're going to keep silent about.
Because if they do convert, that could mean that they are now going to be killed, or they can no longer have any contact with their families, right?
Well, that's what happens. It's they call it a what is it? Something killing. Um, if your daughter dates a non-Muslim, um, that's an honor killing. If you leave Islam, the oldest son will kill you, or if you are the oldest son, the father will kill you, and that's what happened with Mark Gabriel. He basically, when he left, his father tried to kill him. He escaped to South Africa.
Wow, isn't that unbelievable? Any other question that anyone has for David? Well, I have learned a lot, as I always do every time I hear you speak. And by the way, David has written all of these amazing booklets. What do you call them?
Well, supposedly they're supposed to eventually be books, but I never get around to doing that. They're
But
syllabi.
he has them in a wonderful format, ready to purchase anyway, with amazing pictures that he uses in his slides. And he's written one on, I guess they're like treatises, or they're one on just about every religion. And he's done several on the Islam religion. So if someone wanted to purchase that from you, how would they do that, David?
Well, I need to do this. I need to get this out on the website. I haven't done that yet, but I do have a website. It's Dr. Lehman Presents, and then there's Rhode on the Road with Jesus. That's RHODE, and I've done a lot of my presentations on her um, program. It's broadcast on YouTube and several other places. And so she wants me to have all of mine from her broadcast brought over to mine, which I'm probably going to do. But I think just um, probably I always have them at all of our Eagle Forum events. So if people want to come to one of those, they'll have them available.
That would be great. And the Eagle Forum of Orange County meets, is it the first Sunday of every month, Gloria? And tell us the name of the church where you meet. Well, you can tell us too, David.
It's Huntington Valley Baptist Church, and all you have to do is put in your phone, and it'll take you right there.
So Huntington
Intersection
Valley Baptist Church, and it's in Fountain Valley, California, right?
in Fountain Valley, yes. Now we normally will meet once in a while. We'll meet at the Calvary Chapel of the Harbor, but anytime close to Christmas, they have this play that takes over all of their rooms, so we don't get to have it there. But most of the time, we're at Huntington Valley Baptist Church.
And that was on Thursday?
And
That's on Sunday nights, starting at 7 o'clock. Now, if we're meeting at the Calvary Chapel of the Harbor, it usually starts at 6.
so it'll be the first Sunday evening in December. And who is the speaker going to be, Gloria? Do you want to announce that?
Yes, it's going to be December 7th. And Dr. Atausa Madavi is the speaker, and her topic is Embracing Wholeness, a Journey to Holistic Health and Wellness. And she will be addressing holistic medicine versus conventional medicine, prevention versus disease management, lifestyle and diet, and toxicity, the main causes of illness, a holistic health, a mind, body, spirit approach. That is December 7th. And January 4th, we will be at Calvary Chapel of the Harbor. We'll start at 6 o'clock. And Pastor Tom Hughes, is our speaker. And his topic is Satan's PR machine. And his talking points are evil is being rewarded, and that always leads to more evil. Satan's PR machine runs on human suffering and global deception, and the war on truth is fueled by cultural indoctrination.
Great. Thank you, Gloria. Those sound like wonderful meetings coming up. There's one more question. This is by Emily Springer. Do you want to answer or ask your question, Emily? You need to unmute.
Well,
Go ahead, Emily.
In the meantime,
Or
Dr.
it may,
Lehman, could you share your email address? I put my email to you in the chat of this video, but should I email you directly for a PDF?
Yeah, I've got all my notes now. I just um, I, my email is jdavidlehman@msn.com. That's Lehman.
Okay, at msn.com.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
so Emily, do you want to ask your question? It looks like you're unmuted. It's either Emily or your husband, Ed, but I don't hear anything.
She still has the mute icon on next to her name, so she's not unmuted.
Oh, okay. Emily, can you unmute?
Go to the bottom left of this Zoom screen, Emily, and hit the little microphone icon.
I think she has now. Oh no, it's muted again. Can you say something, Emily?
Um,
She doesn't have her microphone synced with Zoom. That's the problem.
Oh, okay.
Can I ask you a question, Dr. Lehman? Of the Muslims in Iran and other places having dreams of Jesus, this is supposedly a big thing. And frankly, in my opinion, that's one of the main ways we're only going to ever influence Islam is by, supernatural, praying for them and having Jesus intercede and appear to them.
yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if that's actually true or not. I know Justin Peters doesn't believe it is, but I think it might be. Um, they there's always a possibility God may making some special provision for them,
Oh, it's still on.
but we don't want to add to his words, and so the Bible itself is basically God's way of getting to us. Most of the Muslims that I know have become Christians as a result of just reading the Bible, and that happened with Mark Gabriel. Actually, he was given a Bible by his pharmacist, and he said nobody had ever told him the gospel his entire life, and that was true of Koresh as well. Um, that nobody had ever shared the gospel with him and then nobody shared a Bible with him. But as soon as he started reading the Bible, he read through Matthew 5 and the Sermon on the Mount, and he read all night long. And came the next morning and told the pharmacist, "I no longer need your pills." You know, he'd become a Christian, gave his heart to Jesus. By the way, according to the Quran, Adam and Eve were sent down to earth from heavenly garden after Satan's temptation. They realized their sin and repented. The only way a man can regain the garden is to oppose Satan relentlessly and successfully by obeying the law of God. All people are born Muslims, innocent, free, and pure. There is no original sin which was passed on from Adam. Islam does not believe in man as sinful, but imperfect and forgetful. Therefore, he needs to be constantly reminded of the right path through the prophets and revelation. Islam focuses on the intellectual capabilities of man and his responsibility for obedience to the will of God, while Christianity focuses on a relational capacity and then the need to fulfill that along with a relationship with God. But the source of evil in Islam is Satan. Muslims believe that God would send a fresh message or revelation whenever the faith of people declined. And the Quran speaks, there's actually 124,000 prophets before Muhammad. He's supposedly the last prophets. They don't mention them all, but most of the biblical prophets are listed in there as well. According to the Quran, it's the most widely read book ever written. It's a textbook from which all Muslims learn to read Arabic. It's a central reality in Islamic life. The Prophet Muhammad himself directed proper recording and arrangement of the Quran, supposedly. No word, order, or punctuation mark has been changed, omitted, or added, according to them.
David, I think Emily and her husband Ed are able to ask their question now. Go ahead.
I've talked to some Muslims, and they say the Bible is corrupted.
Yeah, that's what they have to say. But the problem with that it would be impossible to corrupt it because, as Dr. Gleason Archer, who spoke 28 languages, I asked him, what about Ugaritic? Oh, that's right. I teach that every other year. So that'd be 29. One of the leading textual critics in the world, he said, you go back and you look at all of the manuscripts. We have about 6,000 existing manuscripts of the New Testament alone. And of those 6,000 manuscripts, he said there's only 400 words that any textual critic would question, and it's as if, and he says those 400 words do not change the meaning or the doctrine in any way. For so all practical purposes, we have the original autographs. And then, so it was sent out. In fact, Christianity was a missionary language, so it went out in all various languages as well. But even in spite of that, if you just take the writings of the church fathers back and forth, it covers all but 11 verses. So the fact is, it would be impossible to corrupt the Bible because we have the manuscripts, the Alexandrian text, the Western text, the neutral text, the Textus Receptus. You gather up all of these manuscripts, and by gathering them together, you can see that there's a 99.5% accuracy of the original words of the text, and the words that we don't know for sure don't change anything. So it's impossible for them to say that, but it's just because of ignorance. They say that because somebody told them that, but it's not true.
We do have a Muslim that just went up here, mosque, on Todd and Stony Point, and one of my buddies and I are thinking of going visiting them.
Uh-huh.
So see what they say or believe.
Maybe you could
Yeah.
bring them a Bible. They've never seen one, probably, to know if it's corrupted
Well,
or not.
I got plenty of them. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, the
Well,
Muslim
thanks for
hell
that
has.
question.
Yeah.
Any other question? Otherwise, we've kind of reached our time limit at 9.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate everyone who've joined us and hope that you've all benefited from this. And what we will do for those of you who are listening in from the Sonoma County Eagle Forum chapter, we've had Dr. David Lehman come and speak for us here before, but we're going to bring you again, David, and you can give this presentation to us in person with all of your slides, okay?
Okay, thanks so much.
We'll work on that for the coming new year. Maybe, I think we're scheduled up through February, so maybe for March, you can put that on your calendar, okay?
That'd be great.
That would be
So-
wonderful. And we meet the last Thursday of every month.
I have a quick question, Arlene.
Yes, go ahead,
Okay.
Kelly.
2 questions. One, is that the Southern California Eagle Forum having the talk on holistic medicine next month? Is that?
Yes, that's in Orange County.
And then is it accessible for us via Zoom or anything anyway?
I know they always record it. They could send us the recording and we could watch it here.
Yeah.
Is that possible,
That'd be.
Gloria?
Yeah,
it's-
Dennis will record it.
It's
Dennis
right.
always
recorded.
records it.
Yeah, it's recorded, but it's not live streamed.
That's okay. Yeah, just good to see it. That would be cool, Arlene. And then
Sure.
how many mosques do we know are in Sonoma County or Northern California?
I just know of one in Santa Rosa. I don't know. I think there's one in Sacramento. Anyone know where the others are? I'm
Long
sure there are
Beach,
many in. What did you
Long
say,
Beach.
Gloria?
Long Beach.
Oh, yes. There's probably some in San Diego. Who knows? That would be an interesting study. We'll have to look that up.
Yeah. Thank you.
But I know they are spreading, and before a mosque can be built, it means that there has to be a certain percentage of Muslims living there. So that shows you here in Santa Rosa, we must have a rising number of Muslims, or they couldn't have built the mosque they had here.
By the
Praise
way,
him.
what do you see on the screen? Anything from me?
All we see now is your handsome head with some beautiful sign in the heavens behind you.
No. Okay. All right. Just curious.
Okay. Oh, and Mr. Roy has his hand again. Do you have a quick question?
Yes, Dr. Lehman was out in old Sacramento here recently, and Muslims had a table set up, handing out brochures and a free copy of the Quran. And I just, was walking by with a family member and just saying, "Hey, Jesus is the Son of God." So the only other person that was out there, I think, maybe were Jehovah Witnesses. So I think Christians, in other countries, they stand up for their faith and they're persecuted and killed. Here in America, we're afraid to even mention our faith. So we want to encourage everybody to really take opportunities. I came across a Persian man from Iran, and I gave him a Bible tract saying, "Hey, learn about the Persian wise men that came and read the stars and came to Jerusalem." So, it's there's easy ways to do it, and I just want to encourage everybody to do that, to reach out respectfully and carefully, but
I
faith.
totally agree with you. So is it Chris Roy?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm really glad you joined us tonight and appreciate all your good questions. And I agree, we need to be more bold to stand up for our faith. And, maybe it isn't the most popular subject, but for Thanksgiving, especially, even if you have relatives who are coming for dinner who maybe are not devout Christian, I think that's a perfect time to let everyone know that our pilgrim fathers came to this country seeking religious liberty. We just acted out the whole play about our pilgrim forefathers at our last Eagle Forum meeting and realized again how fortunate we are that we did have people coming here for religious liberty, and they signed the Mayflower Compact, which was a compact with God, and let us know that this is what all government should be based on, as a compact with Heavenly Father, that we are going to have our governments follow as according to his plan for us, and not to have our government started by some monarchy, but started by people who believe in religious liberty and want to have a compact with God. So point that out to your family around the Thanksgiving table, even if it is not a popular subject. I think this is a great opportunity to do that. And thank you for bringing that out, Chris. We need to be more bold as Christians because we are going to be losing our religion otherwise, as more and more Muslims are coming in, and they are happy to hand out their religious literature, as you said, even a free copy of a Quran. Amazing. And Stephanie says, yes, we could give out cards to strangers. Good idea. Carry something with you wherever you go that you can hand out. Well, I would like to ask David Campbell, are you still with us? Doesn't look like it. Is there someone who would like to volunteer to give our closing prayer? How about Peter Kaiser? Would you do that for us, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Lord, thank you for this presentation tonight. Help us to be further equipped in later dates to serve you better in this area. Help us to have the bravery and the courage to shine your light, even with Muslims. I was going to a South County house about a new satellite church plant, and this Muslim lady came to the door, and she was kind of behind the door because she wasn't, she was just kind of not ready to go outside, but I happen to have a Gideon Bible, so Lord, she took it graciously. So let's be positive. They may even be more interested in the Bible than we think, and Lord, help them to have visions and dreams based on the Bible, that they would ask for a Bible, ask for a church the next day, and that there are many more Muslims coming to Christ in the last few decades than for hundreds of years. Thank you for this revival, and may we be part of it and shine your light, and there be many Muslims coming to Jesus Christ. And thank you, Orlean, for this presentation and all the work you've done for many decades with Eagle Forum. And God bless you all with thanksgiving. In Jesus' holy name, amen.
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 Thank you, Peter. That was a beautiful prayer. And thank you again, Dr. David Lehman, and for everyone who joined us. And this recording was made, and I will make sure that it's put up on our website so you can go and listen to it and see the pictures that David had that went along with it. And you can then share that with your friends, and I'll let you, hopefully that will be posted tomorrow. Thank you again. And if I can figure out how to turn this off, I will do so.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.
Thank you.